Hello guys and welcome to Horologique. Welcome today to the review of this Seiko 5. The reference is SRPE51K1 and this has generously been lent in by a friend of the channel that wishes to remain nameless, but again, you know who you are and thank you very much. So I was saying, this is the Seiko 5 SRPE55K1 and this came out at the beginning of this year, 2020. And at first I didn't pay any attention to it because I thought it was too similar to the Seiko 5 models that came before it in around 2019. But once I've handled this watch for some time now, I can say that it's a pretty different watch to the previous Seiko 5s. In many aspects, and the differences will come mostly in terms of wear, because this little guy here, at first I just thought it was like this one but without the bezel, but actually it is very different. It is a bit smaller and much thinner, and it wears much differently, so it is a very good proposition for an everyday watch. So let's start with the dimensions. This watch is around 39.5 millimeters in diameter. It's less than 12 millimeters in height. The lug to lug is just 44.5 and the lug width is 20. So some very nice proportions there. Just as a reminder, the previous Seiko 5, so 5KX, is 42.5 in diameter. The height is around 13.5. And the lug to lug is like 46.5, and that makes it that it wears much differently than this little new Seiko 5. So the first thing I wanted to discuss about this little SRP Seiko is the dial. And if you look at the dial, you will see that it's a gray dial with a pretty nice sunburst in there, and as you can see, the sunburst is very nice. It will depend on how the light hits it. If you are standing in a shadowy place, the dial will look pretty dark, as you can see there, but as soon as the light hits it, it lights up to a clear gray with that very nice sunburst. Pretty different from the Seiko 5 that I believe was the same. This is not gray, this is charcoal, and it does have a sunburst, but that is much less pronounced. I believe it's because of the color. But when you put it side to side, you can see that the SRP 55K1 is much lighter. And the Seiko branding is applied, as are the indices. And those indices are pretty full of Loom, but they are actually pretty smaller when you compare it to the ones on the 5KX. But they hold the same aesthetic, but they're a bit smaller and a bit thinner. Look at the 12 index. It is much thinner on the SRP 55. You still have that very nice automatic text at 6, so that hasn't changed. The hands are the same, actually the same style of hands, but they are much thinner on the SRPEs. Look at the minute hand, at the arrow hand, and you will see that it's the same idea of hand, but much thinner than on the 5KX. Same thing for the hour. The only hand that looks pretty much identical is the second hand, and of course it doesn't have the red tip. Protecting that nice dial is a piece of hardlex crystal, and I would have much preferred sapphire here, just because if these wants to be an everyday watch, I believe sapphire would have been a much better choice. A little bit of a missed opportunity there, especially considering the price of this watch, and we'll discuss about that later. And as you can see, the Loom glows green and is not bad at all. Seiko is well known for its great loom, even on its entry-level pieces, so this does not disappoint. A wonderful loom. I wanted to compare the loom with the loom on the 5KX to the left, and as you can see, the loom on this model of the 5KX is bluish, actually pretty blue, compared to the green one on the right. And here it's a matter of taste, basically. If you prefer the bluish loom or the greenish loom, it's pretty much up to you. I don't actually mind. I'd rather have... I really do believe that the green loom is more impressive, but the blue loom, according to me, looks better. So yeah, it's a matter of taste there. So have your pick. Let's go to that flat bezel, and as you can see, it's a polished bezel, and this watch has already taken a lot of nicks and scratches on it, as you can see, but well, that wouldn't bother me if I were the owner of this watch, and I'm sure it doesn't bother the owner as well. And as for the case, as you can see, you've got your typical circular brushing on top of the lugs, and you've got your polishing at the sides, with the side where the crown is, with the crown guards meeting at the crown and giving that very characteristic shape that came with the SKX. So very nice there, very nice attention to detail, pretty fine brushing, pretty nice polishing, nothing to complain there. You even have drilled lugs, which is wonderful when you want to change your straps. And if you want these to be an everyday watch, changing straps easily becomes paramount. Let's go to that crown again, and that crown winds pretty easily, of course, as pretty much every 4R36 movement does. As you can see, it is not signed, sadly, but it's not polished. The movement here is the ubiquitous Seiko NH36 with a day and date complication. It beats at 21,600 beats per hour, which equates to 6 ticks of the second hand per second, giving it that quite stuttery movement. And as you can see, the movement is no big thing. It doesn't have blued screws and very nice polishing. Well, it's pretty okay, and it's pretty good that you can see it here. So that's wonderful. And the good thing about this movement is that it just keeps on ticking and ticking. It doesn't require a lot of service. That's why it's the choice of so many micro brands. Okay, let's now talk about that bracelet. And it's a stainless steel bracelet, 3 links, Royster. It looks pretty good. I believe that it has solid links, although I could be wrong because I see this kind of division there if you look closely at the bracelet, so it might be folded, but it doesn't look like it. It looks pretty solid, actually. It is held together by pins, so no screws here. The clasp is signed Seiko, so very good, and it has a double securing system and a double push. Alright, and it's just a pressed metal clasp, but weren't you expecting that on a Seiko 5? And of course no micro adjustment here of any type, and it does have hollow end links. Even though this bracelet is a step up from what you used to get on Seiko 5s, I believe that it is not wonderful yet. It is not great, and especially at the price that this watch is sold for, they could have made something better. So we mentioned price, let's talk about it. This watch at retail it's $260. From what I've seen, you can have it at low 200s, which is okay. I think you could expect some things to be a bit better for this price point. And here's, I believe, the best about this watch, and it's the way it wears. That 39mm case, and especially that height, makes it that this one wears low on the wrist, and you feel it, but it is not bothersome, and it's certainly not as large on your wrist as, say, an SKX or even a Submariner. It is much smaller. Think of maybe a Gen 2 Explorer at 39. So for guys, just as a reminder, my wrist is 16.5 centimeters, 6.5 inches, and for me it just wears wonderfully. I love the way it wears. So that is for me the main selling point about this watch. And just as a comparison, you can see that the 5KX wears much larger and especially much thicker. You can feel this watch, even though it's not a behemoth, but you can feel it much more than you would the SRPE51K1. So, is this a perfect everyday watch below $250? Well, I believe it's not, of course, no watch is perfect, but this one gets quite close. Some things could be better, like that bracelet and maybe a sapphire crystal in there. Change those, keep the same price, and it would be pretty damn close to a perfect watch for around $200 to $250 mark. The movement is great, it wears wonderfully, it has a day and a date, which is very important on an everyday watch, and it's pretty. That dial, that sunburst gray dial, makes it very nice and very interesting. It's always kind of a different color when you look at it. So good, very good. If you're interested in this watch, I have left a link to Amazon below, so go check that out if you want. Thank you very much for having watched the review. Don't forget to like this video if you find it useful, and to subscribe to the channel because there's a lot more content coming, guys. I've got so many watches, I've got to speed out the reviews. So thank you again, and I'll be seeing you very soon. Goodbye.